Okay everybody, welcome to Reesy's Design Aspects 101 in the Shaping Bay. What we're going to do here is just explain a few simple design aspects, things that you might have gone, oh that sounds like a dumb question, I don't want to ask anybody that question. I might be able to explain it to you right now. We'll start with the length. The length of the surfboard is measured along the stringer on the bottom of the board, so it goes along the rocker. This board is a 5'10" scimitar, and that, I'd like to show this, absolutely perfect, not even half a millimetre out. So that's 5'10". The board's 19 wide on the widest point of the board, which is right there, 19 inches wide exactly. And then we use calipers up here to measure the thickest point in the middle of the board on the stringer for your thickness. This one 2 1/8, so that's measured in the middle of the board on the stringer. Some people think, I'm 6 foot tall and this is a 5'10" surfboard. If you get a 6 foot tall surfboard and put it up against me, it's not as tall as me. That's because of the rocker, that bottom curve of the board and the length. So, just to explain that one. Up next we'll talk about different, actually while we're talking about rockers, that's the bottom curve. So if you look at along the board here, it's the bottom curve from the nose of the board going along the bottom of the board to the tail. So you've got your nose rocker or your entry rocker and your tail rocker. The more rocker that's in a board, with any design aspects, just expand what you're thinking about to the 10th degree, and then that'll explain a little bit what's going to happen if you go with more rocker. So if you go, okay, what's going to happen if I put more rocker in a board? Well, imagine a banana board, like a board that's got so much rocker, it's like a banana. It's going to turn fantastic, but it's going to want to push water, so it's going to be slow, it's going to want to push water, but it's going to turn fantastic. The same thing if you have a board that's really flat, like just flat as a piece of wood, it's going to go in a straight line really fast, but it's not going to want to turn. So that's the difference there. With concaves, now I use single concave on nearly all my boards. So another thing with the entry, with the rocker, is you've got your entry rocker with your entry point, So the entry point is where the water starts entering into to the bottom of the board. So at your entry point, I'm not sure if you can see there with the camera, but my concave starts about here at the entry point. And just imagine that if you're ever in a lake or in some flat water with your surfboard, just put it down on the water and see how that rocker sits in the water. You got your single concave there, running all the way through there and right back and finishing up there on the back fin. So starting there, running right through. With concave, it's designed to give you more speed basically. Concave, now I'll try and explain this, but if you've got your rocker that we just talked about, the more rocker you've got, the better the board turns, but the slower it's going to go. So you take all that foam out of the board along the stringer line on the bottom of the board to give you that concave. All of a sudden you've got a flatter rocker on the stringer line. So when you go in a straight line, you've got the flatter rocker. As you put your board back on rail, you go back to the original rocker on the rail, and you've got more rocker and it turns better. So that basically describes what a concave does. In a straight line, it's going to give you more speed. As soon as you go to put that board on a rail, you've gone back on the original rocker line. And that's why I think single concave works better than double concave. You don't need to put that double in, as far as I'm concerned. But then we do on some boards. The other bottom curve that you can use is V, so that's like the bottom of a boat, where you actually shape it so that the string is raised and you've got the bottom going off either side of the board. That's better for rail to rail surfing, so it's better in your bigger boards, we find. It does disperse water out of the side, so it does make the board a bit slower. Concaves, I'll generally run concaves on any boards up to about 6'6". Any boards over that will keep flat, or if they get bigger and over 7 foot, then you start using your V's as well. That's on your, that's not including your mals. As far as rails are concerned, you've got a low rail where you've taken more foam out of the board, and then you've got your boxy rails when you've left more foam in the rail of the board. Now, a board that's got a real boxy rail is going to have more flotation, so it's going to paddle better, get you on waves better. When you go to dig that rail in, when you're doing your turns, it's going to want to sit on top of the water and not sort of bury the rail, not put the rail in nicely to turn. So a board with a lower rail is going to work better for turning. Depending on all the other aspects of the board, what model it is, what rocker it's got, or how thick it is. Sometimes you'll have a really thin board but with a boxy rail. So it just depends on the other aspects of the board of what sort of rail you got. But generally a board that's got a boxy rail, it's got more flotation. So if it's a big heavy guy and he's getting on a 7-foot big bird, we might put a real boxy rail on to give flotation. You can get them on waves earlier, but it is going to be hard to turn. But if you're a big person, you can overcome that. Tail shapes. Tail shapes are quite interesting, but to me they're probably about 5% of the performance of the board. So although they're in people's heads because it's something that's in your eye and it's such a visual thing, and some people do really love swallow tails or round tails or pin tails or square tails or squash tails, and do have their favourites. It is something that's not a major part of the board. Again, depending on all the other stuff you're looking at. You're looking at rockers, thickness, plan shapes. But basically what happens is the swallowtail's got a bit more bite to it, so you find your big retro fishies and your blackbirds. A lot of your fish type boards do have a swallowtail because they do need to have that bite that a swallowtail sort of gives. This one's a scimitar, a little 5'10" scimitar. And you can see it's got a real pulled in plan shape to a small swallowtail. Some people just love swallowtails. I used to just ride swallowtails and nothing else. And if that's your case, that's fine. You can normally work around the different boards and different models to get the right thing. The most best all round tail would be a squash tail, which is what you're looking at there. So that's probably your best all round tail. Goes good in most conditions. It's good in white water, sloppy stuff. Goes good in good waves as well. So we put it on the blunt models, the punt models. It is the most used tail, and it's actually what I'm riding on all my boards at the moment too. I'm riding the squash tail on my 6.7, on my blunt. Round tail. We've got a little frizzle here with a tripod setup. Round tails, good flowing sort of turns, good for your roundhouse cutbacks. Another thing that's not good for cutbacks is your swallowtails. They tend to want to bite and grab. So if you're doing those big flowing roundhouse cutbacks and flowing turns, that swallowtail will want to bite it a little bit. Something like your round tail, your squash tail, a lot more flowing through those open face turns. And some of your fishy type boards work really well with that, but a round tail can work pretty much good on anything. And once you start doing rounded pins and pulling that tail in for real sucky waves, like everyone's seen big gun boards with pin tails on them and made for places like Pipeline or whatever, where you can just see what a wave like that's doing. It's really sucky, and you've got to make a board that's going to sit in that real sucky part of the wave. And you do need to pull that tail in. Anything that's like anything with a really wide tail, got a blunt here, and it's not what it's made for. And you can see that with that sawn off tail with the blunt, really wide tail, and great for releasing off the top, but not good for sitting in real sucky hollow waves. So there's a little bit of explanation of tail sweat.